Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, 39 years ago, the Khalistan Declaration was announced. And as its anniversary arrives, Punjab sees the day marked by key political and religious figures endorsing the movement's massive recent growth. In the US, concern is raised about the new bill demanding all truckers must be fluent in English, which will have a serious impact on the 150,000 Sikhs working in the industry. More on that in a moment. We'll also wrap up our short series looking at Operation Broken Sword and the RSS's ongoing attempts to tarnish the Khalistan community with India's own criminality. And we'll also wrap up Sikh Heritage Month in Canada and how it's helped promote the Khalistan cause. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Thank you for tuning in yet once again. Don't forget that if you want to support our channel, you can find links in the link tree in the description, and you can follow over to satlegetv.com. And by all means, every little bit helps the channel to grow and keep us on the air. So thank you very much to all of our supporters out there. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends and colleagues. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, please do that, because James and I together, we bring you every day our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And as usual, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show. So thank you for all those. So stay tuned for that. Right, James, again, as always, lots to get through today. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, we're going to wrap up our series that we've been looking at in terms of the involvement of India with law enforcement and other potential conflicts within the United States. Now, we know that the recent arrests have been played out in the media as being pro-Khalistan by the FBI and, of course, by India, which we would always expect because they are always on this campaign to go after the Khalistan movement and everything else. But the way that this ties in, as we've been looking all week, to the Operation Broken Sword. Now, of course, with Operation Broken Sword, that had to do with rivalry gangs in California in various counties, and over 400 to 500 officers from all different branches of law enforcement were called in on this investigation that took over 2 years and ended up with 17 arrests and confiscation of a lot of weapons. And that was a very serious accusation that the India media tried to push as the pro-Khalistan group, and it had nothing to do with them. But how we look at this is important because what influence is the RSS, RAW, and of course the Modi government having on the press releases that are coming out of the US and by federal law enforcement agencies under the control of the United States government. It is appalling that they will be pawns in Modi's game. And we're going to take a peek here at a video that we've got. And it's going to basically be more about the narration than it is the images, as the images just loop. But it was important to have something for you to look at while you listen to the information. So let's take a look at that. So tonight we're going to take a quick note of the connections between the Operation Broken Sword in California and that of the recent arrest of Harpreet Singh, also known as Happy Passia. Now, the reason why I brought these two stories together is that both seem to have an influence from India's RSS and RAW agency, among other political different opinions and outcomes. Now, when you look at Operation Broken Sword that we've covered throughout the week, you'll understand that there was a lot of India media that actually used this in order to mislabel and to shed a dark light on the Khalistan movement. Now, with this, of course, has been debunked and shown as a false narrative. The Operation Broken Sword was not associated with the anti-Khalistan movement in North America or Western media. Instead, it was a narrative that was really pushed by the India propaganda machine. And we know, as we've discussed on the show many times before, that in the history of the media and other involvement for foreign interference and transnational repression, as well as just pushing the BJP narrative. They have a very strong media machine that puts out bots and other sources that they feed mainstream media and social media platforms in order to disparage anyone of minority groups or those who speak out or are seen as a separatist threat to India. Now, let's take a deeper look at the summary of the events with Harpreet Singh. And if you still are curious about the other events of Operation Broken Sword, please take a look at the various news sources out there, and you'll see that any of the Indian news sources really did try to push a narrative of it being Khalistan linked, which was absolutely untrue. Now, the recent arrest of Harpreet Singh, by the FBI in Sacramento at the behest of Indian authorities has ignited a firestorm of controversy and raised a serious question about the motivations behind the suspect's labeling as a Khalistani terrorist. Sources within the Sikh community are alleging that this designation is a deliberate mischaracterization, potentially orchestrated by the RSS to facilitate Singh's extradition to India. Harpreet Singh, also known as Happy Pasia, was apprehended on April the 17th based on a wanted notice from India where he is accused of involvement in terrorist activities across Punjab. However, the FBI press release explicitly linked Singh to Babar Khalsa International, a Sikh organization that advocates for an independent Sikh state. This categorization has been met with skepticism and outrage by many. This is a blatant attempt to paint a target on Mr. Singh's back, stated the community leader who wished to remain anonymous. He has never been associated with the Khalistan movement. This sudden labeling is highly suspicious and he appears to be politically motivated as a maneuver. Now, some key points that have fueled these suspicions is the discrepancy in previous reports, and that is Indian police reports and media coverage prior to Singh's arrest did not identify him as Khalistani or associate him with the BKI. Instead, he was linked to other groups, mostly criminal gangs. A lack of visual evidence, and that is that sources indicate that Singh has not been seen publicly wearing a turban or anything else that are common symbols of the Sikh identity, further casting doubt on the FBI's claim. Now, the timing and context of this. The arrest coincides with heightened tensions between the Sikh diaspora communities and the Indian government, particularly following allegations of the Indian government involvement in the assassination of Sikh activist Harpreet Singh Nijjar in Canada and the failed assassination plot of Mr. Panoon in New York. Now, FBI personnel, of course, are involved, and concerns have been raised about the role of certain individuals within the FBI in pushing this narrative. The RSS, a Hindu nationalist organization, has long been accused of targeting Sikh activists and suppressing the Khalistan movement. Critics argue that the RSS wields significant influence within the Indian government and security apparatus, and that they are also using this influence to silence dissent and persecute those who challenge their ideology. The RSS has a well-documented history of demonizing Sikhs and portraying them as terrorists, said a prominent Sikh activist. This false labeling by the FBI plays directly into their hands and could have devastating consequences for Mr. Singh. The community is demanding a thorough and impartial investigation into the circumstances surrounding Singh's arrest and the accuracy of the FBI claims. They fear that this case sets a dangerous precedent where individuals can be falsely accused and targeted for their political beliefs. The implications of this case extend way beyond the fate of Harpreet Singh. It raises fundamental questions about the integrity and that of the extradition process and the extent to which foreign governments can influence law enforcement agencies within the United States. Once again, this has been a series report by Satellite TV, and we will continue to follow this developing story and provide updates on perspectives as they become available. So, as you can see there, Angus, there is a lot of overlap in terms of the verbiage that's used in the releases for the FBI to label them as pro-Khalistan and, of course, the India media. Now, we've seen this time and time again with the misinformation, disinformation, and outright manipulation by the India government, by the RSS, and by RAW. And that's why it is so essential that yourself, myself, our program, and others really report on the truth and dispel the false narrative of them being pro-Khalistani links. And, that is such an important thing for the world, because when you look at the Operation Broken Sword, of course, that is still such a massive arrest and massive operation that is working its way through the courts, that it is still in the front of mind when it comes to people in the Sikh community, but also outside of the Sikh community. And that's how the RSS and the propaganda is really using that both consciously and subconsciously to link the pro-Khalistan movement with these gang and terrorist activities when there really is no link at all, Angus.
Yeah, I think really this whole argument is all about who controls the narrative. Now, domestically in India, of course, Modi's government control the narrative. They control the media, and their allies have massive, powerful interests in all the mainstream media. So basically, they control the domestic narrative in India. So every Indian who watches any form of media, even social media, because of course any dissenting views are of course either silenced or banned from India, as indeed we are. It doesn't matter. The average Indian just gets spoon-fed the Modi narrative. So that's a battle that's already won, and it is very hard for anybody outside of India to counter that narrative. But India does not, as yet, control the narrative outside of India, but it does its level best. It does have, as you said in that report there, James, a massively powerful media machine that does spread its tentacles globally. And a lot of media outlets here in the West do rely on, they do source a lot of their information. They aggregate information from various sources, and some of those sources are, of course, the big or the massive Indian media outlets. So, of course, they don't check, they don't fact check, they just feed off ANI news and the mainstream Indian media, and they just repackage it and regurgitate it to the Western audience and don't fact check it. So they just assume it is correct, and thus that way the Indian controlled narrative does tend to get spread across the West as well. And that's where we come in to try and counter this narrative and actually bring the truth to hopefully to a wider audience. But also the other tactic that India are clearly engaging in on a massive scale now is trying to infiltrate as many agencies, as many institutions and infrastructure bodies as they can, again, to get their own people into positions of power and influence. So again, the RSS, this Hindutva agenda, can also be spread across the West. And we are seeing that, for example, in Silicon Valley as one simple example. We're seeing it across academia, across industry as a whole, but also, and worryingly so, into politics and law enforcement. And of course, many of our commenters have highlighted the very fact that Mr. Patel, the head of the FBI, allegedly obviously has links to India, and one wonders again where his allegiances actually ally with. And that again is a big concern. We had the story, of course, related to this in the criminal arrested in California, and the local FBI head of the FBI there, another Patel, of course, from Indian descent. And again, where does his alliances lie? So that is the worry. Is India and is Hindutva trying to impose its own people into positions of power across US law enforcement? Yes, we are seeing that. And of course, this then does help them control that narrative. And again, part of that narrative is to ensure that the Khalistan movement, this peaceful democratic movement, is somehow stained and allied and smeared with criminality, which of course it isn't. So yes, James, it is a hot war that we are having to fight. The battle lines are clearly drawn, and it really is getting down and dirty, particularly the more the Khalistan movement is succeeding against India.
That's exactly right, Angus. And let's not forget that when they put out these false narratives from the FBI office on the behest or potential influence of the India government, it also, in my mind, it takes away from the amazing work that the officers on the front line and the agents on the front line are doing. They actually, with Operation Broken Sword, potentially stopped a massacre from happening at an event and at a Gurdwara. Now, these people were targeting the Gurdwara. They were targeting Sikhs. They were not pro-Khalistan people that were going out to fight for a cause. These were just idiots with weapons that were involved in criminality, and they have absolutely, as I said again, absolutely no link to the pro-Khalistan movement. It was just a narrative that was pushed by the India government to try and push that on the mainstream public. So again, it's important that we verify information. And when you're online, don't forget that there are India media sources that are actually using the Fox logo, the CBS photo, the CNN logo, and they use that in the news reports to make it look even more credible, which, some would question what the credibility of those news agencies. But at the end of the day, I have hope. So we'll go with that. Now, on another scale, Angus, we have also seen the wrap-up of the Sikh Heritage Month. This year was a huge success with so many events, so many people taking part. Some estimates, I believe it was over 550,000 people, for example, that attended the Vaisakhi Day Parade and Khalsa Day Parade in Surrey, British Columbia. Some estimates have it up to 700,000. So it shows just what an amazing turnout that was in the community. But there were other events as well. We'll take a look here at how the Vaisakhi Day events and the entire Sikh Heritage Month had a benefit to the community and to the Khalistan movement to get the information out to the public, not only to Sikhs, but as the entire community. But the world also watched with bated breath to see the amazing floats, to see all of the activity, and to share in the experience that is Sikhi. So let's take a look at this video. It highlights some of the events and ends off with a very special message at the actual grand opening. So we're going to take a look at a few of the events that took place over the last month and thank the Sikh Heritage BC and all of the other organizations across Canada and around the world that came together to celebrate the amazing accomplishments and contributions of the Sikh community. Sikh Heritage Month in 2025 is wrapping up and coming to an end. The BC community celebrated community strength, and it also sparked dialogue on Khalistan aspirations, but it was also celebrated across Canada and in many other regions. The annual Sikh Heritage Month in British Columbia concluded with a vibrant array of events that showcased the rich culture, history, and spiritual contributions of Sikh Canadians. Organized by Sikh Heritage BC, the month-long celebration themed Anand, which is a state of divine peace and bliss, drew thousands across Metro Vancouver, Victoria, and beyond, reinforcing the community's integral role in the province's social fabric. While the events focused on unity and heritage, they also provided a platform for discussions about Sikh identity and the Khalistan movement, highlighting its symbolic resonance among the diaspora. Now, Sikh Heritage Month in BC was big, but it also extended across the nation. It kicked off with events at the Surrey City Hall, as well as a lively event at the Shahid Bhai Hardeep Singh Nijjar Memorial Building in Surrey, which featured live performances, art exhibitions, and the recognition of 5 Sikh Heritage BC scholarship recipients and 3 community changemakers. We were there for that event at the Surrey City Hall, which kicked off Sikh Heritage Month in BC. The event set the tone for a month that included over a dozen activities, from the world's largest Vaisakhi parade in Surrey, which attracted over 500,000 attendees, to intimate workshops exploring Sikh history and traditions. Highlights across Canada were vast, but we also look at certain ones, including the Challenging the Darkness Memory Journal Workshop at the Peel Art Gallery, Museum and Archives in Brampton, Ontario, where participants created scrapbook journals reflecting on resilience and remembrance, and a special workshop on the 1947 partition's impact on Sikh heritage sites like the Nankana Sahib and the Kartarpur Sahib. The month culminated on April the 26th with a grand finale at the area banquet hall featuring kirtan, which is spiritual poetry sung to music, author talks, and a celebration of Sikh women's contributions through the lens of the 1984 Sikh genocide. The Surrey Khalsa Day Vaisakhi Parade, organized by the Gurdwara Sahib Damesh Darbar, was a standout once again this year, with colorful floats, live music, and community groups embodying the spirit of Anand. Similarly, the Vancouver Khalsa Diwan Society Vaisakhi Parade on April the 12th brought together diverse communities offering free food and cultural performances that underscored Sikh values of seva, which is selfless service, and community. Monahan Kaur Shergill, Sikh Heritage BC's Director of Media and Communications, described the month as a resounding success, noting these events not only celebrate our heritage, but also foster intercultural understanding, allowing British Columbians to connect with their Sikh neighbours in meaningful ways. Now, while Sikh Heritage Month centered on cultural pride, it also provided the backdrop for discussions about Sikh sovereignty and the Khalistan movement, a separatist vision for an independent Sikh homeland in Punjab. The movement, which gained traction in the 1970s and 80s, but waned after the violent crackdown in India, has seen a resurgence among the Sikh diaspora, particularly in Canada, home to one of the largest Sikh populations outside of India. Events like the Toshakana, and I probably pronounced that wrong, my apologies, Twin Cities of Sikhs, Lahore to Amritsar, exhibition which explored historical ties between these cultural hubs, and presentations on the 1984 attacks on the Golden Temple contextualized the Sikh struggle for self-determination. These moments resonated with attendees, many of whom see Khalistan as a symbol of resistance against historical injustices, including Operation Blue Star, the anti-Sikh violence that followed, and the genocide. The Khalistan movement's visibility was further amplified by the memory of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Surrey-based Sikh leader killed in June of 2023, whose death sparked tensions between Canada and India. Nijjar, a vocal advocate for Khalistan, was honoured during several events, with his legacy framing discussions about Sikh rights and autonomy. While India labels the movement a security threat, supporters in BC view it as a peaceful push for self-determination, exemplified by non-binding referendums organized by groups like Sikhs for Justice. Indira Prast, a sociology instructor at Langara College, noted the symbolic power of these gatherings. Events like Sikh Heritage Month allow the diaspora to rekindle the spirit of Khalistan, not as a call to violence, but an expression of cultural and political identity. She emphasized the visibility of Sikh heritage events, strengthening community cohesion, which in turn fuels advocacy for Khalistan as a legitimate aspiration. Some of the successes that we can point out in terms of the Sikh Heritage Month 2025 offered several positives, and that in relation to the Khalistan movement's non-violent advocacy. Now, it offered community mobilization, which was the large turnout at parades and workshops, demonstrates the Sikh diaspora's unity and organizational capacity, key for sustaining grassroots movements, the involvement of youth through initiatives like the UBC and SFU Sikh Students Associations. That, of course, helps to ensure the movement's longevity. When it comes to global visibility, high-profile events covered by local and international media amplify the Sikh narrative, drawing attention to historical grievances and the call for self-determination. This visibility aligns with the movement's strategy to seek international support, including that of the United Nations. In terms of cultural legitimacy, by framing Khalistan within the context of Sikh heritage, events destigmatize the movement, presenting it as an extension of cultural pride rather than extremism. This approach counters India's narrative and appeals to the broader audiences, including non-Sikhs. When we look at the intercultural dialogue, it was very successful as well, as Sikh Heritage Month's inclusive events such as Gurdwara tours and communal meals, known as langar, build bridges with other communities, fostering allies who may support Sikh causes, including Khalistan, as a human rights issue. However, the movement does still face challenges, including India's accusations of Sikh extremism and diplomatic tensions with Canada, particularly following the Najjar's killing, that complicated community advocacy efforts, but it still is a very powerful and successful movement thus far. Critics argue that the movement's focused on historical grievances risks alienating younger Sikhs more concerned with integration than separatism. Yet for many attendees, Sikh Heritage Month 2025 reaffirmed Khalistan as a dream of justice and equality, rooted in the same values of Anand, celebrated throughout April. As we look ahead, British Columbia's Sikh community reflects on a triumphant Sikh Heritage Month. The events have left a lasting impact. They have not only honored over a century of Sikh contributions, but also provided a space to explore complex questions of identity and autonomy. For the Khalistan movement, the month's success underscores the diaspora's resilience and commitment to keeping the conversation alive peacefully, symbolically, and on the global stage.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. I've already been warned before I got up on stage here by some of my friends about age, don't speak for too long. So I will take that to heart and not let you suffer too long. Look, I'm incredibly humbled by this award, by this honor, by all of you. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge these young people who put this together. Let's give them a hand. If there is a hope, a dream, a vision for us who are graybeards now, call ourselves elders, was that our children would take these stages, that our children would stand tall and speak in their mother tongue, that our children would remember their heritage and the rich culture that they come from, and the history and the roots that they are absolutely held by. And so it warms my heart to no measure, to no heights, that I see these young people who have taken the mantle and are moving forward in a way that is graceful, dignified, full of integrity. And thank you to you as well for choosing Anand as our path this year, because any other path, given what we're facing now, the Sikhs would have gone a different way. So, as Sikhs, Anand is where we will need to hold our ground as we face the incredible threat from the US and this economic war that we're in. I will add this, that as we celebrate these months, celebrate the cultures and the communities and the heritage of all who are here as Canadians. And there's not 5 different types of Canadians, there's only one type of Canadian. And we all share in the responsibility of this nation. So the challenge before us is not to look for the differences that divide us, but those things that make us stronger as we work together, as was already shared. And in that Anand, in that state of being content and having that gift of being able to see the Creator in all, is where we will occupy ourselves as we move through this difficult time. And this is the moment that we will have to demonstrate our Canadianness, if you will. This is the challenge in front of us. Let us move away from division. Let us do less of hating. Let us do less of finding those things that we use to tear each other down. But look for those moments where we can build the other, celebrate the other, and find those strengths that are going to move us through these moments in a way that we can look back and say, We were proud Canadians then, and we're proud Canadians now. So I'm so humble, so grateful, so thankful. I want to honor all of the different folks that are here, that are giving themselves into public service, and having done a little bit of that last year, just a tiny bit. I know the results didn't get to where we wanted them to, but I gotta tell you, you have my respect.
So as you can see there, Angus, it was a huge resounding success this year, not only for the Sikh community, not only for the Khalistan movement, but just in terms of bringing people of all different ethnic backgrounds, all different religious beliefs, bringing them all together to celebrate the amazing people of Sikh culture and heritage, Angus, as they've had an impact around the world, but we got to shine a light on them here in Vancouver and the rest of Canada.
Yeah, fantastic images, and what a turnout. I mean, at least 500,000 people taking to the streets for the Vaisakhi parades. It's just absolutely awesome to see. And in terms of spreading the message, spreading the good message of Sikhi, what a powerful event that really is. And I think it really is just such a huge platform to spread the message to the wider community, particularly in Canada, but not just Canada, but of course around the world, what Sikhi is and who the community stand for. This word education comes up almost every show. It's all about educating the wider world about what Sikhi stands for, and that message, of course, is such a positive message. Great images that I particularly picked out: the Langar, that wonderful institution of Langar. Again, that features so heavily. The Vaisakhi parade, the Khalistan flags, all, of course, always in abundance. Always wonderful to see the great yellow flags, that yellow sea of Khalistan flags, always in attendance, which again sends out that message, makes it very visual. It's spreading the word about the Khalistan movement. Again, extremely important. Sadly, of course, there was the sad spectre of Hardeep Singh Nijjar always overshadowing the events. Who can obviously forget Hardeep Singh Nijjar and what happened there? It does, of course, point to very significant ongoing events and the issues of Canada and transnational oppression. So that, of course, should indeed coexist with the positive sides of the event. And I think the particular thing I finished up with there, that speech at the end, one quote which I thought was actually really sums it all up for me, was, "Don't look for the differences in our communities, look what unites us." I mean, what powerful words those were, James. And I think that really sums up what Sikhi is about and ultimately what Khalistan's all about.
Absolutely. And Singh Dhillon, I mean, he's such a great inspiration for all minority communities in Canada, but especially in the Sikh community. It shows that he was able to stick to his beliefs and convictions and make some change within the RCMP many years ago. But also after a dedicated life of service in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in so many different roles, he has moved on to become a senator to further the agenda of just continued growth and betterment of the country and the people. And if you are interested in more information about Sikh Heritage BC, you can find the website at sikhheritagebc.ca. They're online, but you can also find a lot of resources on there. If you're a teacher or anybody else, there are classroom information and handouts, some course studies that have been approved by the province of British Columbia. So again, there's a lot of great information on there, but most of all, you can also support their work because they come together and work hard year round to make sure that Sikh Heritage Month in BC and across the nation is a success, Angus.
Absolutely right. Okay, James, let's move on as the time marches on. Let's move on to my first story, as always, under the pressure of time. 2 days ago marked the 39th anniversary of a very important day in the Khalistan movement. It was Khalistan Declaration Day. And to celebrate this and mark this anniversary in Amritsar and across Punjab, activists took to the streets in their hundreds, if not thousands, just to make the point and remind the Modi government that the Khalistan movement is not just alive and well, it is in rude health and it is growing in momentum. So, thousands of these pro-freedom activists took to the streets, including the Dal Khalsa, and they performed Ardas at the Akal Takht, of course the highest seat of Sikh power, to commemorate this wonderful, important day. Now, notably, during the peak days of the Sikh armed struggle, particularly in April, it was April the 29th was the key date in 1986. And this, of course, happened just 2 years after the awful attack on the Harmandir Sahib, and of course what followed that, the genocide, and then of course the ongoing mass extrajudicial killings that really blighted the Punjab, and so many thousands of Sikhs, young Sikhs, were murdered by the Indian state. So amongst all that, so these brave guys did stand up and say, right, that is it, we are standing for a new sovereign Sikh homeland, that of Khalistan. So it was April the 29th, 1986, right in the middle of this terrible situation, they had the courage to stand up and declare that they will one day establish the state of Khalistan. And it was established by the Sarbat Khalsa at the Akal Takht itself. And now, during the event on Tuesday, 3 times MP Simranjit Singh Mann attended. He's the president of the Shiromani Akali Dal. And the former militant leader Bhai Daljit Singh Bittu also attended, and the Khalistan activist Bhai Narayan Singh Chora, along with his party activists, participated in this event to mark the occasion. And activists took to the streets carrying the wonderful Khalistan flags by the thousands. They marched from the Bhai Gurdas Hall to the Sri Darbar Sahib, of course the supreme Sikh shrine. Now, talking to the media, the working president of Dal Khalsa, Paranjit Singh Mann, made his own statements, and he, of course, he couldn't resist the urge to provoke Modi's government for attempting to paint the aspirations of the movement with such a negative brush and stain as they always did, and portraying Sikhs as what they call the villains of peace, which, of course, they're not. Countering the anti-Khalistan narrative, the Dal Khalsa leadership said and reiterated that Sikhs were neither against peace nor against any religion, and that they love to take Hindus of Punjab along with them in this struggle for Punjab's sovereignty and independence. Of course, as we've always said, Khalistan is open to all. It's all about recognising and respecting other religions and other people of whatever their background and ethnicity or religion as equals, a very important part of what Khalistan stands for. And paying homage to all those who did sacrifice their lives for the cause of Khalistan, a policy statement was released before the Ardas, reaffirming that Khalistan is our lifeline. They reiterated that Khalistan, when it does arrive, will become this buffer state between India and Pakistan, these two nuclear-powered countries who are on the brink, of course, at the moment of going to war. And politicians on both sides were indulging in this warmongering, which was, of course, damaging, deeply detrimental for the people of Punjab, as it's believed, of course, unsurprisingly, that Punjab sits right in the middle of these two powers. And if these two powers go to war, who's going to lose out most? Probably Punjab itself. It lies in that sort of that land in between. And of course, the establishment of Khalistan would form that essential buffer zone for both parties' interests and, of course, global peace interests as well. And the Kanwarpal Singh statement that was made to the press also said, in our neighbourhood, the Kashmiri community was also struggling for decades to get freedom from from the yoke of India. On the Kashmir issue, an explosive situation has natural adverse fallout on Punjab. So, of course, what's happening in Kashmir in the past and, of course, presently does have an impact on Punjab. So the priority of Sikhs surrounded by these two nuclear powers is to protect and uphold their separate status. And in the case of both countries going to war, the leaders were of the opinion that Sikhs won't afford to become a party to any of this madness, as he said. And the Sikhs would decide to keep in view the interests of the people of their region, their future and human values. And Khalistan, once it is established, has a potential to end the human destruction and bring a long stability to the region. And the powerful countries of the world need to pay attention to this aspect. Earlier, a seminar was held at Bhai Gurdas Hall to deliberate on all the aspects of Khalistan, and the speakers were unanimous that there was, of course, and unsurprisingly, a dire need to evaluate past events in an unbiased manner. And they reiterated the point that it is a non-violent path, it is a peaceful and democratic movement. And Simranjit Singh Mann urged the international community to press upon India to respect and recognise the right to self-determination of Khalistan. Let the people of Punjab, he said, exercise this right without any fear and coercion. This is the only peaceful way to find out a political resolution to the Punjab conflict and restore long-lasting peace in this region. So basically, they reiterated the original statement of Khalistan, and they reminded the Indian government that Khalistan is coming. It is a peaceful and democratic movement, that Narendra Modi's government must respect that, and they must, alongside the rest of the world, respect the rights to self-determination of the Sikh community and the Sikh Punjab, and the establishment of Khalistan is not just an inevitability, it is a democratic right, James. So very powerful words coming out of the Punjab.
Absolutely. And I think that we need to be sure that we remind people of the historical challenges that the Sikhs have gone through. And that would go right back to the colonization by Britain, and then the partition of 1947, and how that all comes together to culminate how they've been oppressed as a society, as a religion, and as a culture, and all of the ways in which that the Modi government and governments before him have tried to really wipe out that history and that knowledge and that culture. And this just shows that it is not going away, that the Khalistan movement is strong, that people support it, and of course that they will have their sovereign nation one day, and that's when we will be there, Angus.
Very much looking forward to that day, James. In fact, I think you and I will be setting up a cafe ourselves in Khalistan just to sit outside in the Punjab sunshine and enjoy our chai as we broadcast to the people of Khalistan. I do look forward to that day, James.
That's right.
Right, let's move on, and let's move all the way across the Atlantic to North America, James, back to south of your border, United States, and a bit of a worrying development under the Trump administration. Of course, this is under the whole umbrella of Make America Great Again. But one of the let's call it the collateral damage in this drive to improve and it will increase, I suppose, the self-identity of the United States of America. There's been this move by Trump to try and ensure that English, the language of English, and I as an Englishman, I raise an eyebrow at the Americans' version of English, of course, as I can never resist a little dig at the Americans for their English. But of course, Trump wants to make English, of course, very much the official language of the United States, and ensure that it is widespread and spoken everywhere, including across every industry. And this, of course, does impact the trucking industry. Now, the trucking industry does have a massive impact for the Sikh community. The Sikh community have a huge involvement in the US trucking industry. As a result, because this new directive has come in, it's the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has directed that he will rescind and replace guidance to strengthen inspection procedures for compliance with English proficiency requirements. What all that means is truckers and everybody in the trucking industry must have a high proficiency in English, in spoken English. Now, the Sikh Coalition, as always, one of the most high-profile organisations in the United States that always fights on behalf of the Sikh community, particularly against the state authorities and organisations that represent the state. They're always lobbying and pressuring those organisations to ensure that the Sikh issues are respected and that the rights, of course, of the Sikh community are respected. And anytime it comes in conflict with the Sikh community, they are always at the forefront to remind and educate and advise and guide the US government and its affiliates about what they should be doing to respect the rights of the community. So, of course, they have got very much involved in this. They've issued a video. Let me play this video for you now, which gives you a little snapshot of what it's all about.
President Trump ਵੱਲੋਂ 28 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ 2025 ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟਿਵ ਆਰਡਰ ਸਾਈਨ ਕੀਤਾ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਮਰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਵਹੀਕਲ ਚਲਾਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਬੋਲਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਪੁੰਨ ਹੋਣ। ਇਹ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੋਰਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਕੱਤਰ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਡਫੀ ਨੂੰ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੀ ਮੁਹਾਰਤ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੋੜਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਲਣਾ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਰੂਲਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਰੱਦ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। Sikh Coalition ਇਸ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਚਿੰਤਤ ਹੈ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਕਾਰਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਟਰੱਕ ਡਰਾਈਵਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਤਕਰਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਯੋਗ ਵਿਅਕਤੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਰੁਜ਼ਗਾਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੇਲੋੜੀਆਂ ਰੁਕਾਵਟਾਂ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਲਗਭਗ 1.5 ਲੱਖ ਸਿੱਖ ਟਰੱਕਿੰਗ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ 90% ਡਰਾਈਵਰ ਹਨ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਅਤੇ ਲਾਗੂ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਿਰਿਆ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਸੰਗਤ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਐਕਸਪਰਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਭਾਈਚਾਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਜਾਗਰੂਕ ਕਰਨ ਅਤੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਅਪੀਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਕੋਲੀਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤਿਆਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਟਰੱਕਰ ਨੋ ਯੋਰ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਕਾਰਡ ਵਰਗੇ ਸਾਧਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਕਰਨ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਤੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਵੀ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਸਿੱਖ ਕੋਲੀਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਟਰੱਕ ਡਰਾਈਵਰਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਰਹੇਗਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
So there you go. So as she said, it will have a massive impact because approximately 150,000 Sikhs are working in this industry, 90% of whom are drivers. And of course, the community has played a massive part as part of the huge American supply chain, the huge logistics supply chain that feeds America and the American consumers. And more than 30,000 Sikh drivers joined the industry between 2016 and 2018, contributing significantly, of course, to this critical sector. And of course, when supply chain problems hit in 2020, they were there to pick up the slack. As the Sikh Coalition said, Sikhs literally help drive the American economy. So this executive order does follow Trump's March executive order seeking to establish English as the official language of the United States. So, James, it is a slight concern. I think, sadly, this is collateral damage of this drive. There is, of course, a safety aspect. Part of the reason, of course, in industry, and I've experienced this in my own parts when I've worked globally, and the airline industry is another example where English is the standard language purely so that there is a common language between everybody who gets involved in the industry, purely for communication, therefore for safety issues. So there is that element. So I understand the safety argument about it, but ultimately it does have a massive impact on the Sikh community. So of course there is always a compromise to be found. Sikh Coalition doing what they can to try and find that. But yeah, James, yet another worry for the Sikh community in the US.
Absolutely. And we've got to watch how that plays out across North America, because that could have a direct impact on Canadian truckers that are crossing the border into the U.S. As we have the Port of Vancouver, the Port of Montreal, and so forth. A lot of goods will actually arrive in our ports, and our truckers will take those containers, across the U.S. border down into California, Washington, New York, Maine. So a lot of crossover there, and we need to be aware of how that may potentially impact all of the truckers in Canada, because we have a very large contingent of minorities who are truck drivers in Canada, and that includes our Sikh community. So again, we have to watch how that plays out and demand that if it is extensive, then that is wrong. You've also got to look at the fact that you have false reports coming out about them doing roadside reading and writing tests of drivers that has been refuted by U.S. DOT and different state departments. But again, it shows where it's going and how this could definitely have a huge impact on an already strained supply chain and transportation industry. The transportation industry in Canada and the US are looking at a shortage of drivers, and a lot of drivers are just not getting into it as a new career. So if you start to take out all of those who may be new arrivals to the country and are learning the language, but may make a mistake here and there, then this is just a really sad day for transportation and for the foreign workers who come to do the work that, let's face it, a lot of others aren't willing to be away from their families for days on end or weeks at end. I mean, there's just such implications, Angus.
Yes, of course. The impact isn't just on the current situation. It does have a huge future impact because, of course, it's going to discourage people entering the industry. It is a tough job, and we certainly have the same issue here in the UK. We have a massive shortage of truck drivers because it's a tough life. It is, the youngsters want an easier life, with all due respect to them, but understandably, they don't want to sit in a truck for days on end away from home, etc. And of course, then if the barriers are increased with the language barriers, of course, such a large percentage of truck drivers in the US come from the Sikh community. If their primary language is Punjabi, it's going to discourage young drivers into the industry. So again, it's just building up problems for the future. But we'll keep an eye on that one. Fingers crossed that a compromise will be reached for the sake of not just Sikh community, but for America at large as well. Right, Jez, let's time's marching on. We need to crack on, and I'm going to rush into our comments column because we had loads of comments as always, and we'll start today off with TC, one of our regulars. And yeah, well done to TC. He shouts out for all the support workers. James, you did this article on support workers, the healthcare workers. And TC gives them a big shout out because they are just as essential as the so-called important ones. So absolutely right. And the Punjab Times follows up, well, actually with quite a poignant point related to this, and say most female staff tend to lose their babies through miscarriage due to work pressures and stresses in the medical field. As you say, it's like stealing a woman's power to produce babies, to make female staff work in hospital, etc., etc. So, James, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but certainly if women are under pressure to work, and of course there are the financial pressures to keep working right up until literally the last moment when a woman is pregnant, it is potentially going to have a huge impact on a woman's health, particularly during pregnancy.
Yeah, that's something that definitely I will, that piques my interest, and I'm looking into to see if I can find research on that information, because it's a very concerning point if true, Angus.
Absolutely. So, yeah, thank you for those comments. Critics Corner it makes quite a return with a vengeance. This is a comment from Master X Stephen Stones. Thank you for this comment. We did this article on the grooming gangs. And this chap mentions, you lost your point when you said Muslim grooming gangs. Well, Chief confirmed, 93% of grooming gang members are white Christians. And only 2% are British-born Pakistanis, 1% Indian. Okay, this is an interesting point. I'd like to take you to task on this, because I'd love to know where you get your statistics. And it's an interesting point that you do make, because it actually reinforces the very point that I was making in that article, is that the issue has not been tackled against Asian grooming gangs because of the threat of being accused of being racist. And there is a clear undercurrent of accusation in this comment here that I myself could potentially be racist by putting the spotlight on Muslim grooming gangs, and that is not the case. But again, this is the whole point of the problem, and this is why it is raised regularly now, because the reason that Asian grooming gangs have not been investigated is because there is a fear of being accused of being racist if you do tackle the Muslim grooming gangs. So the key point here, it doesn't matter ultimately what the ethnic makeup of grooming gangs is. It's the fact that grooming gangs are not being tackled if they are Muslims. Yes, the white grooming gangs are being tackled. That is a relatively easy thing to do. There's no accusations of racism there. So again, the makeup of these statistics is irrelevant to the point. The point is the Asian grooming gangs, even if they are only 3%, as you point here, or Muslims 2%, as according to your statistics, it doesn't matter. The fact is the police did not investigate those because they were afraid of being accused of being racist. That is the key point. Now, I just want to pull you to task on your statistics, because there are no definitive statistics about the proportions. And let me just give you my own very brief research. The Home Office itself commissioned a report 5 years ago into this. What they did conclude is that there is a huge lack of data. There is only poor quality data available because ethnic background data is not collated accurately over these sorts of crimes. So basically they said that they cannot draw guaranteed conclusions about the ethnic makeup of the grooming gangs. But what they did say, and for example, independent reviews of the Rotherham case, Professor Alexis J concluded that the majority of known perpetrators were of Pakistani heritage. Greater Manchester Police identified men convicted at the trial in the Rochdale abuse scandal in February 2012 as British Pakistani. The Telford abusers were men of Southern Asian heritage, according to an independent inquiry. These reviews also mentioned concerns among police and social service teams that if they pursued groups of non-white offenders, they might be accused of racism. So there you go. So all I would say in response to your comment, thank you for pointing that out. I would take you massively to task on it, other than that you actually proved the very point that I made in the first place, James. It's a very difficult subject to tackle because it is, every time you address Muslim grooming gangs, you are accused potentially of racism. Even if not overtly, there is always a subcurrent of accusation that you are being racist. And let me just caveat everything that I've said is that I cannot be accused of racism against the Muslim community. Why? Because my voice is the voice of one of the key Quran translations audiobooks in the world. Yes, I have, unlike probably most of you in the audience, even many of you Muslims in the audience, I have actually read the Quran from cover to cover. I have narrated it as an audiobook, as one of the definitive English translations. So, and that is amongst many other academic works, Islamic academic works that I personally have narrated on behalf of friends of mine in the Muslim community. So ultimately, there are my credentials, Master X Stephen Stones. I am not racist. In other words, I can validly, with authority, comment on this on this subject. So there you go. Sorry to rant, James, but that I wanted to take that person to task on that particular subject.
No, absolutely, Angus, and it is true. And it's, you look at certain sectors where there are investigations, and we need to make sure that law enforcement at all levels in all regions see it as a criminality issue, not as a racial issue, not as a cultural issue, but deal with it head on when there is criminality involved. Regardless as to anybody that's involved, treat them all equally, arrest them all equally, and put them through the process of the criminal justice system equally. And that's where it is a concern that there's fear that makes people pull back from investigating certain communities. And it's not investigating the communities per se. It is investigating members of a certain community who are acting at the behest of themselves, not as a representative of such communities, Angus.
Exactly that. In other words, it's all about equality of law enforcement. And the issue is that the law has not been enforced equally against whites or Muslims. It has been an unequal law enforcement due to the fear of being accused of racism. That is the point. But thank you nonetheless for your comment anyway. Right, let's move on. And Govinda Sond says, the Five Eyes nations have all the info regarding these fake narratives and propaganda, India's fake narrative, particularly against the Sikh community. So why are they not doing anything about it? And as you say, I don't know why no strict rules and actions against such dumb attitudes in Indian state. Why on earth? Well, I would say actually, James, I believe Canada and the US certainly, and Australia and certainly New Zealand are doing things about it. The UK is very noticeable in its absence about taking action against the Indian state and this fake narrative, James. But I think Canada's done a much better job than the UK.
And you know what? It is a matter of, different results and different opinions of the governing bodies. And of course, Canada has a huge interest in trying to get to the truth of transnational repression, foreign interference, all of that because the public demanded it. It wasn't just because a government on a whim turned around and said, we got to do this, we've got to do that. It was because the public demanded it. And it was in the news cycle. And that's what drives results. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how other nations, now that there is somewhat of a settling, we'll say, with all these, over the last year, all these elections, new leaders, new leadership. We'll see if the Five Eyes, we'll see if Canada, the US, and the UK come together. I mean, there's just so many different things. And then you've got Pakistan issues right now that we're watching, the tensions growing. So yeah, it's going to be something to hopefully bring the nations together to start looking at a Khalistan that is free, that is sovereign, and it doesn't have influence from either Pakistan or India, and gives them that sovereignty that they so long have deserved, Angus.
Indeed. And talking about Pakistan, Rishton Kaur gives us a very helpful history lesson. And I would actually say, please do watch many of my podcasts where we have talked about partition in the past. And of course, this betrayal, which you referred to, it was Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, who advised Master Tara Singh at the time to basically not trust the Hindus because, of course, huge promises were made by the Hindu, particularly the Brahmins, that, you align with us and we'll give you your sovereign Sikh state. And Mr. Jinnah basically said, look, just be a little bit careful here. And unsurprisingly, yes, the great betrayal unfolded, as you rightly say, which ultimately resulted in the Operation Blue Star, the genocide, etc., and the terrible 80s and 90s. So thank you for your reminder of that dreadful history lesson. All I would say to that, James, is how on earth could we forget the great betrayal?
Exactly. And it's important for people to keep reminding the newer, younger generation of this and hope that it's not repeated yet again.
Yeah, and absolutely. And this prediction that the Hindu philosophy of Savarkar would come into a majority, it will indeed cause a lot of trouble for the minorities in India. How true those words were, how prescient. Happy says, oh yeah, now this James is back onto what we've been talking about today. The FBI under Kash Patel. This is exactly why they're calling the criminals. Basically, Happy's calling out, I think, essentially what we've just been saying. We need to be careful because the FBI is deliberately being infiltrated. It is, as Happy says, it's the beginning of the Hindutvaization of American politics. We need to keep an eye on this.
And you have FBI agents that are actually in India working side by side with the NIA and different agencies there as well. So why are they not speaking up to their counterparts in the US to say, whoa, hold on a second here, that's not the information there? Or are they actually just being filtered certain information even though they're on the ground in India? It's, it's a matter of, are they influencing from the front lines, Angus? That's a big question as well.
Indeed, and we must continue our fight to highlight what is going on beneath the surface as much as we can. That's Manjit right. Kaur, who I know has been with us for a very long time and just periodically pops into our comments column, always with a very nice little hello or Sat Sri Akal, whatever. Well, thank you, Manjit, for your continued loyalty to the show. Thank you for all your comments over the many months that you've been contributing. So thank you. That was just a little nod to say hello back to you once again, and we haven't forgotten you. Now, Nikhil Singh, I am a Sikh and Hindustan Zindabad. Now, this is, if I interpret this comment correctly, you're promoting a Hindustan as opposed to a Khalistan. Well, all I would say, if that is true, and you're a Sikh and you're quite happy with the Hindustan, absolutely, that is your absolute democratic right. We have absolutely no issue whatsoever with a Hindu Rashtra as long as it doesn't impact Khalistan, because we believe in democracy. If the majority of India demand that we want a Hindu-only Hindustan, then that is your democratic right. But at the same breath, you must also allow the minorities to have their own homelands if that is what they democratically want. And ultimately, as Star says below, free Khalistan Zindabad. So these two comments sit side by side. What these two comments represent is basically democracy in action. And this is not what's happening in India, because India is preventing, ironically, the Hindu itself is actually, in their drive for a Hindu Rashtra, they're preventing democracy unfolding. They could have their Hindu Rashtra if they would indeed allow a referendum in the Punjab to allow Khalistan to be established, which it will do anyway, and allow all the other regions to establish their own homelands, which would leave room and a democratic freedom for the Hindu population, should they so wish, to establish their own Hindu Rashtra, James. It's all about democracy in action.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. It's about the freedom of choice and the freedom of guiding your own future. And that's what democracy is about, Angus.
Indeed it is, and we will continue to fight for that democratic right to self-determination, sovereignty, in other words, the establishment of the nation of Khalistan. Looking forward to that day.
That's right.
But on that note, we must bring Perspectives to a close for another day, and indeed another week. So thank you so much for keeping with us. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. There's been loads of great comments, so please do keep them coming in. Don't forget to send us lots of interesting comments about things that you'd like us to talk about or research. It always is very educational for us, which in turn helps us educate our audience, our wider audience as well, about things that you may know about but others may not. So do keep those comments coming in. Don't forget you can message directly at message@satellotv.com. But in the meantime, that is it for another week. Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.